Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for November 4th through 10th, 2024. So, we are officially in November. I realize we got into November last week, but this is our first full week in November. How is that possible? It is kind of crazy to think that we are beginning to wrap up the year as I record this. And we are getting ever so close to 2025, which actually has a lot going on. I'm sort of jumping ahead of things, but it's sort of like, popped into my head. Like it's like the cosmic clock, all these different hands are moving. And November, in a way, prepares us for that. And it's not just Scorpio season, it's Saturn changing signs, it's Pluto going back into Aquarius. So this is a pivotal month. And it's a month that, when you look at the astrology, we have these typically these very key periods, not just two periods, but key periods that really say when we're going to have a transition, when we are building around a bigger story, and November is one of those months. I will get more into that in a moment, but just to reintroduce myself and to say hello for those that do not know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I'm an astrologer and psychic medium, presently located in the rolling hills of Maryland. Typically, I'm in New York, but taking care of my father at the moment. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And every astrological month, every new moon, every full moon takes us through the zodiac, which is the wheel of life. And the wheel of life teaches us about life. It teaches us about ourselves. And each month, each sign is a sign that will reveal something to us. And Scorpio is a really deep sign, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Scorpio. Yes, it's my birthday season, but we got to get to next week, the 17th, until it's my birthday. So I have not just a unique perspective on Scorpio, I have a personal perspective on Scorpio. And astrology, it's like it has these 12 distinct spaces, and we have this collective space, let's call it the zodiac, that we all each year that we go through. And right now we are collectively going through the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac. It is a sign that turns the mirror on us, and you're like, what does that even mean? But here's the thing, and I've said this, I even probably said this last week. Imagine a life where you never question yourself. You never look within. Nothing ever happens in your life. Do you grow? Absolutely not. So Scorpio, just like every sign of the zodiac, plays a key role, and it plays its own role. And so every year the sun goes into Scorpio, typically on the 23rd of October, sometimes on the 22nd, and we look inward. We get into a sign that is a water sign. Water signs, these are Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Their function is to get into these emotional spaces with Scorpio. It's the emotions that we typically share with other people, is that vulnerability, trust, intimacy, and the transformation that happens when we allow people to come into sometimes very tender spaces. And if you've ever been to therapy, or if you've ever spoken with a trusted confidant, that's in a way the energy and the archetype of Scorpio. So here we are. We just had a Scorpio new moon the first day of November, and that Scorpio new moon opens a stage that takes us throughout the month. Now, sometimes the new moon is quite further along in the season. It just so happens that this Scorpio new moon is right on the 1st of November. So we are in, again, the space. It has a lot of emotions coming up. We just had Halloween or Samhain or Day of the Dead. And there's a reason that these sort of cultural milestones, these universal cultural milestones are at this time, because we are inherently in a space of transition. The physical world, I realize this is very northern hemisphere, the physical world is transforming. And certainly if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the other way around. Your transformation is the rebirth of life. And that's the beauty of Scorpio, is that that transition, and even that the energy of endings prepares us for the new beginnings that are symbolized by the signs of Aries and Scorpio's opposite sign of Taurus. Both Taurus and Scorpio, we're going to have a Taurus full moon next week. These are the signs of matter in the material world. And we sort of see that in Scorpio, not everything lasts. So that sort of is that natural transition of life, and in many different ways we may be navigating it this month. And that Scorpio new moon is still with us. It opened a lunar month that takes us into the beginning. I think it's the 1st of December when we have the Sagittarius new moon. But more importantly, that new moon had what's called Mars opposite Pluto. Now, we talked about this last week, and Mars opposite Pluto is a pretty intense energy. And so maybe this is a good time to check in, like, how are you feeling? What came up for you this weekend? Was it emotional? Was it existential? And Mars was in Cancer. I say was because Mars has since moved on to Leo. But Mars in Cancer hits on deep emotional points. Cancer is a very primal sign. It's like what I need. Need to feel cared for. I need family. I need connection. There's that sense of past and memory with Cancer. And Pluto is over on the other side of the sky. Pluto's an evolutionary planet. And Pluto says that something has to grow. I say has to grow and evolve over the next 4 weeks, and it could be around Mars, how we take action, how we move forward, how we assert ourselves, how we individuate, and maybe even how we move on from some of the things that we're still carrying, because there is that sense of past and memory with Mars in Cancer. Now, that energy, Mars and Pluto, will sort of ripple out over the coming days and even the next couple of weeks. But that said, Mars has gone into Leo as of yesterday, November 3rd. And here's a little, going back to, it's a little bit of a technical point. It's called rulerships. And you're like, what are rulerships? And in astrology, each sign of the zodiac has a planet that it's ruler. And the ruler of Scorpio is Mars. Traditionally, maybe you're scratching your head like, I thought it was Pluto. I use traditional rulers as a whole other conversation for another time. But that said, when the ruler of the season changes, we will have two different sort of sides to the season. And so we started Scorpio season with Mars and Cancer. Again, water, emotion, memory, past connections, feeling safe. And now Mars is in Leo. Leo's a fire sign. Fire is the first element of the zodiac. It talks about new beginnings, taking action, fire, passion, creativity. And Leo is the second fire sign. The second fire sign is also the fifth sign of the zodiac. I know a little bit of some gymnastics here. And over the next few weeks, we have Leo as sort of this support or this parallel experience. And it's Scorpio and Leo are two very different energies, even though they are both fixed signs. Scorpio talks about the impermanence of life, and Leo is full of life. It's the sign of the sun. And so for me at least, when I put these two signs together, they're very sexy, they're very passionate, romantic, creative. There's perfect for art and fashion and music. It's a bit rock and roll. And there's an edginess to Leo plus Scorpio. And we take the energy of the sun, Leo, and it's through that very intense lens of Scorpio. And it says that on some level over the next few weeks, while we round out our time in Scorpio, we are really focusing our time on Leo as well. And Leo is also identity. Who are you? And I realize that that's a question that we can spend hours talking about. But here's the thing, and this is why I love Leo. Leo makes it very simple. Who are you? It is that feeling that you feel when you're doing the things that you love, that light you up, that give you passion and joy. And if you've ever had a child or been around young children, a 5-year-old does not have an existential crisis. A 5-year-old typically knows exactly who it is and knows exactly what it wants and it just shines. And there is that youthfulness to Leo. And I think on some level, this is a season where we are looking at that sort of tension between Scorpio and also Leo. Identity, really being ourselves, expressing who we are, but also the other side of the coin with Scorpio. Scorpio says that we have hidden facets of ourselves. There are things that we keep private, that we only share to those that we trust, and maybe these themes about identity and maybe how we don't always share who we are. We keep it locked away, we keep it safe. But of course, we're all different people. It's for you to see how that is relevant in your life. And as an aside, Leo is going to be an area that we're going to continue to look at even when the sun goes into Sagittarius at the end of November, because Mars will go retrograde on December 6th. So just your friendly reminder that all planets of the zodiac go retrograde except for the sun and the moon. Mercury does it the most frequently, Venus the least frequently, if I'm remembering my astrology correctly. And every 2 years we have a Mars retrograde. I believe the last time we had Mars retrograde was January of 2023, if I remember correctly. And that I just remember of that time because I'm a Scorpio and Mars ruled, and Mars spent a long time in the sign of Gemini. I thought I was going to die. It's a joke, but Mars in Leo, Mars will turn retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo on December 6th, and actually will return to Cancer at the end of January of 2025. More things that we'll talk about later. My point is, start to pay attention to these themes about self and passion and romance and creativity and individuality and identity. And even, again, Scorpio season, as I said in the very beginning, the need to look within, the need to examine yourself and to question yourself, not to sort of inflict pain upon yourself, but it is to, again, like sometimes we need to get into that uncomfortable space because that's where the magic happens. So again, with Mars turning retrograde in December, now that Mars will sort of be running up throughout November to its retrograde, we will be revisiting this part of the sky when Mars turns retrograde at the end of December and then throughout January. So that's why I say pay attention, take notes, really start to look at what are the themes that are coming up for you. Because like I've said at the very beginning, Scorpio really touches on big emotional themes, and these are themes that don't always feel good because we're in a space that feels very vulnerable. But vulnerability, as I said before, is where the magic happens. So we need that to some degree. We need people that we can confide in. We need confidants. We need to feel that we can go into these spaces. We don't have to do it alone, of course. So as I was saying, Scorpio new moon, Mars is now in Leo, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole last night because I was like, how often is Mars in Leo during Scorpio season? And actually the answer is not very often, because the last time that Mars was in Leo during Scorpio season would have been 2009, which was very interesting because it's kind of a very particular time in my life. And then before that was 1996, before that 1994. Then we have to go all the way back to 1979, 1977. So this is not something that happens very often. But for me personally, maybe this is, I'm a Scorpio, I've got Jupiter and Leo. I really love that sort of that sexy tension between Leo and Scorpio, that creative energy, and the alchemy that happens during the creative process. And maybe you're a creative person. It could be art, it could be music, it could be design. And there's this process that happens when we're really trying to create something, and then something shifts. It becomes like this alchemy, and then you create something. So anyway, so that's to pay attention to rulerships, even though it's a little bit of a technical thing, and kind of go a little bit more technical, with astrology. And I want you all to think of your personal astrology as a space. And this space is uniquely your own. It's calibrated to the moment that you're born. If you know your birth time, if you only know the date you're born, you only have, unfortunately, a part of the picture. You have a big part of the picture. You only have part of the picture. But within the space are these 12 subspaces. These are the 12 signs of the zodiac. So whenever the sun moves into a new space, it illuminates a different facet of your life. This is something that you see every week when you listen to your horoscope. But I, of course, when we go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, this will be another way to reintroduce your astrology. And within these spaces, especially for your personal astrology, you have your own personal astrology. There might be planets in these spaces. And I'm just saying this because all the time people are like, well, why is this affecting me this way and not this way? Well, like maybe your personal astrology. And so this is why it's really important, whether on your own or with a professional astrologer. I'm a professional astrologer. Some of you, my clients, to really look at your life as a greater whole. Now, I love discovery. It could be the part that is Scorpio sun, Sagittarius rising. So I love going into the birth chart with people to discover these hidden spaces and to gain a greater perspective. So it's a little bit of Scorpio season, information for you. And that said, and overall, we actually don't have a lot of aspects this week. We have Sun trine Saturn. So we do have a week where we can hopefully put things in balance, put things in order, do the right thing, do the mature thing, the responsible thing. That's all about Saturn. We do have Venus square Neptune this week. That will play more into the weekend. And Venus square Neptune can be beautiful, alluring. It can also say that all that glitters is not gold. We need to look beyond the surface, and we need to reframe how we love, how we you open our hearts to other people, because Neptune gets into these energies of transcendence. Transcending love on a human level and opening it to love on a higher level. I realize that's a big statement, but Neptune in its highest expression gets into more of the spirituality, the spiritual side of things, and even with Venus, the spiritual side of love. Maybe we need this sort of like break in the sky, so to speak, to integrate a lot of these deep energies that the Scorpio new moon began to open up for all of us back on November 1st, so just a few days ago. Next week, Saturn will turn direct. And if you ever want to really understand astrology, you have to understand that astrology is time. It's the energy of time. And it's how we live time symbolically on planet Earth. And it's like there are these two cycles that really govern how time unfolds in our lives. And that's one, it's the lunar cycle. So new moon, full moon, and then it repeats, every two weeks. Every 4 weeks is a new moon. The interval is the full moon every 2 weeks after the new moon. And then also Saturn. And Saturn is like the big hand on the great clock. So for me as an astrologer, I pay attention to the lunar cycle, but also pay attention to Saturn for a myriad of reasons. And whenever Saturn makes a big move, it turns retrograde or it turns direct, it says that these 2 months are like these structural points in the experiences of our year. So Saturn turned retrograde at the end of June of 2024, so just 4 months ago. And then Saturn turns direct next week, November 15th, at 12 degrees of Pisces. And these two dates, end of June, middle of November, form these two structural points collectively, but also personally for us. And I want you all to start to see what is building around these 2 points. What was going on for you end of June, beginning of July? How do you see, if at all, that there's a connection to what is beginning to take shape and take form in your life now that we're in November, and especially as we go into next week and the week after? Because Saturn talks about time and milestones and commitment and the need to really look at our lives from a very different lens. Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023, so we could even go back to November of 2023. and to look for commonality. We can even go back to June of 2023 and even March of 2023. And these are all points that on some level connect. And we even, switching gears from Saturn and going to Pluto, we also have Pluto going back into Aquarius on November 19th. So we got a lot of big things on the horizon. Like I said, maybe the sky is giving us a little bit of a break so that we can integrate, we can find our grounding, we can sit in this emotional energy, we can feel the fire, the heat of Mars and Leo. And even if you are 0% artistic, creativity comes in a lot of different forms. Most importantly, creativity is when we take something inside of ourselves, a spark, a desire, and we put it into something. So this is a month, a lunar month, to examine our desires, our needs, our wants, and how we express ourselves, and how we get in touch with our creativity and our passion and our spark for life, especially if we are burnt out, because Leo is an energy that helps us to recapture the flame, recapture the spark. So that said, that's your look at the astrology of this week. We're going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, and it's just your friendly reminder to listen to both your sun and rising sign. I get this all the time. And what I say to people is listen to both, because it is both. You do you, of course, because it gives you a unique perspective. And sometimes there is conflict in the perspective, but these two perspectives that inform each other. And unless you're born at sunrise, you're going to have a different rising sign and a sun sign. If you're born at sunrise, your rising sign and your sun sign are the same. So anyway, listen for both, and we'll see what is beginning to illuminate, for you through Scorpio season in this very particular part of your life based on your sun sign and your rising sign. So starting with Aries. Aries, Mars is your planet. So every time Mars makes moves or makes a big aspect like it did last week, it starts to point your life in a different direction. So imagine you are in a space. The space is your life. And in this space, there are these 12 subspaces. These are the 12 signs of the zodiac. That's why you hear me say very often that you're not just your sun sign, you're also 11 other signs. So a lot of the main focus over the last 8 weeks has has been Cancer. And Cancer is your sign of home and family, roots and foundation. And it's maybe meant that you've spent time at home, or maybe you've been sort of dodging or navigating themes around family and connection, the past and memory, feeling safe, feeling secure, and even getting your needs met. As of yesterday, November 3rd, Mars is now in Leo. So it moves the energy and your focus. It's like you've left one room and you've gone to another room. And now you're in a sign that talks about play, creativity, self-expression, identity. And this is a space that you will actually spend quite a bit into 2025, into the end of January 2025, because Mars is your planet, will turn retrograde on December 6th. Every 2 years you have Mars retrograde. So it's the time where your sign needs to rewind, walk back on something, gain a new perspective, integrate something, and sometimes even to make changes depending on what's going on with the retrograde. So Mars in Leo is really putting the focal point on identity, self, creativity. Who are you? Are you prioritizing the things that light you up and give you joy? Or do you prioritize the things that revitalize you, that help you to shine like the sun? And for some Aries, this is a time that you need to focus on children, maybe the desire for children or something about children in general, but obviously that's not going to be relevant for every Aries. We will talk more about this Mars retrograde as we go on, but to start to, again, put that focus on what's happening. Now, then there's Scorpio season, and Scorpio is your 8th sign. So this is the time each year from the end of October to the first few weeks of November where you need to take a look at yourself. This is for everybody. Like, we all go through Scorpio season, or we go through a sign that's what's called the 8th sign. And so it's like the light of the sun is illuminating what I like to call the 8th room into the middle of the last few weeks of November. And while you're in this space, it's to really listen, to feel, to pay attention, because the beauty and the alchemy of Scorpio, it is to show you things that you wouldn't normally see about yourself, see about your personality, your identity, and see about sometimes even how you self-sabotage. Maybe this is not relevant for everybody listening, but that's the thing that Scorpio can represent, the darker side of ourselves. So there is this tension that's happening around identity and the shadow self and the emotionality and trust and vulnerability. And maybe this is especially with the Scorpio new moon just a few days ago, really a month that's going to bring some sort of breakthrough for you. Taurus, Venus is your planet, and it's wrapping up its time in Sagittarius this week. And Sagittarius is something called gosh, I gotta make sure I'm doing the math correctly. It's your 8th sign. And so I probably spoke about this last week, but the 8th sign in our personal astrology is a space that's designed for us to take a look at ourselves, to ask questions that are maybe uncomfortable, that we wouldn't normally ask ourselves, to sit, to talk about something with somebody, a counselor, a trusted friend, a confidant, and to get into these very intimate and vulnerable spaces. Now, that's going to begin to change when Venus next week goes into Capricorn. But in the meantime, and maybe the past couple of weeks have been very emotional. That said, Venus is making a square to Neptune this week. This is great for art and music, but maybe not so great for feeling like you're really super clear and super sharp on something. And maybe it's really bringing up more emotions from the deep than usual, not just to overwhelm you, but help you to release something. Then there's Scorpio season. Scorpio, especially the new moon that we had a couple of days ago, put the focus on relationships for you. So this is the part of the zodiac season that's all about other people, new people coming into your life, but also turning the focus on your primary relationships, as well as how you interact, connect, and socialize. And even next week, you're going to have a Taurus full moon. Hey, you're Taurus. This Taurus full moon is very interesting because it puts the full moon on Uranus. And you've heard me say this over the past few years, but since May of 2018 and March of 2019, you have had Uranus in Taurus. And this is only going to happen once in your lifetime for 7 years. And it's this period that for some Tauruses is a time of rapid personal growth and transformation. Now, Taurus is a sign that typically does not like to transform, nor do that rapidly. Why? It's because Taurus is a fixed sign, and Taurus is a sign as an earth sign whose job and whose duty is to keep things and to maintain things, to keep things safe, stable, and secure, and to be reliable. And these are wonderful qualities, but I think you and I can agree that nothing has been reliable or stable over the last 5 to 6 and maybe even 7 years. So whatever is starting to brew, even into next week, it's hitting on a story of change and transformation that has its seeds 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's about you, it's about new beginnings, it's about being in the spotlight, it's about relationships, and also to Venus in Sagittarius, these really vulnerable feelings that are coming up that are allowing you to open to a space that normally, typically, you don't let yourself into. Gemini, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is in Sagittarius. I think that was like last week. There was just so much kind of bunched up around that Scorpio new moon. So Mercury in Sagittarius means that Mercury is hanging out in your relationship sign. So because you are ruled by Mercury, the energy of you is being pulled over to Sagittarius. So maybe you have felt a shift or a change. Scorpio is a very different vibe than Sagittarius. Sagittarius wants to travel the world. It wants to see new things. It's restless. It's dynamic. And maybe that you're feeling that as well. But that said, we're still in Scorpio season, so in a way, you're ahead of things. In fact, as we get to the end of November, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde at 22 Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is going to be a bit of a focal point as you go into December, which translates that relationships, connections, socialization, how you connect with people, will also be a big focal point as you go into December. And because Mercury is going to be dancing in a square with Saturn, you may need to get serious about something. You may need to define a relationship, to make a commitment, or get very clear about what is working and not working with another person. That said, Scorpio season brings you into a space within your personal astrology that talks about health and wellness, organizing your life, and really getting on top of the operations of your life. Operations is kind of a funny word, but we all have operations. We get up, we do this, we go that, we go to work, we have to run errands, we need to make sure there's food. And it's to really sort and organize your life with this energy of the Scorpio new moon. But it also talks about your physical health, sort of the rituals, the daily rituals and practices that you bring into your day-to-day life. But with that Taurus full moon next week, it also highlights your spiritual life and maybe needing to find some balance or make some space for the things that actually support you and nourish you and allow you to connect to a deeper part of yourself. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week it's going from Sagittarius all the way to Pisces. So for you, Cancer, Sagittarius is something called your sixth sign. So, you start the Monday off where it's more about work and projects and duties. And then, the moon goes into Capricorn Tuesday, November 5th. That's right, 5th and 6th, and then it's about relationships. And maybe because Pluto is getting ready to wrap up its time in Capricorn, which is your relationship sign, the moon's presence alongside Pluto, and this actually might be the last time moon and Pluto come together in Capricorn in your lifetime. I know, crazy. That it's to really be reflective and to be conscious and present with the changes and the necessary changes that have needed to happen around relationship over the last 16 years. Yes, 16 years. Because January 2008 is when Pluto went into Capricorn, your relationship sign. And I realize you are all different people. Every Cancer that's listening or Cancer rising, of course, you are all different people. But you have your own karma and your own history and your own experiences with relationship and connection and vulnerability and trust. And it runs the spectrum. So to look at the deep work that perhaps you have done over the last decade plus, and here comes the moon, it's like, all right, let's sort of encapsulate this, let's integrate this, what did we learn, and maybe even to live the dharma of the deep work that you've done, this deep psychic and evolutionary work that you've done over the last 16 years. Moon goes into Aquarius, where it will spend pretty much the rest of the week, and it could be bringing up these deeper themes about trust and vulnerability, power and control. And I will say that starting on November 19th, Pluto will go back into Aquarius, and it begins this bigger inner psychic shift that even I think you began back in 2020, 2021, and 2022. You close off the week with the moon in Pisces, which is your ninth sign. It's about what do I believe in, what do I stand for, what I think is true, what do I still have faith. And especially as the moon coming up to Saturn, which turns direct next week, you may need to start to make some decisions about your future. That said, Scorpio season continues to be a season that talks about the self and identity. Who are you, Cancer? I realize that's broad. We're all different people, but it's important because even though we're all collective, we can't forget about our individual selves. And it's to really give time and space, especially during Scorpio season, to illuminate and to invest in the things that actually light you up and give you joy and give you passion. Taurus, not Taurus, goodness, sorry. I have Taurus in the brain. Leo. Leo. So the sun is your planet, and the sun is in Scorpio. And so this is a season for you to focus on home and family and roots and foundation, past memory, and to really find your emotional anchor point during the season. Mars just went into Leo. And Leo is this space that talks about not just you, or perhaps your Leo rising. And so it talks about this ability to stand up for yourself and to take action and take the lead. But Mars is like really inspiring and really motivating and giving you a lot of power and drive at the moment. Maybe it's bringing up a lot of emotional energy because it is playing off that Scorpio sun. So a little bit of a check, Leo. How are you feeling? Do you feel the renewal of Mars? Do you feel the push of Mars? You're like, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's there. It's building. And I will say that Mars is going to spend quite a while in Leo into the end of January, because Mars is actually going to turn retrograde on December 6th. So there is this bigger story that's beginning to unfold, Leo, about you taking action and maybe not taking action, meaning needing to look at sometimes the complicated times where you haven't taken action, or maybe you have felt the need. For some people, it's about fear and security, but that's the shadow side. That's the thing about a retrograde. It means that we need to go back and look at what is hidden. But that said, for some Leos and Leo risings, you do feel that foot on the gas, and maybe you've needed that foot on the gas to really move forward and take action. Typically, when Mars is in the first, whether you are Leo sun or Leo rising, it's puts a lot of focus on you. It's about what you want, your desires. Meaning, sometimes it's not really about other people, and maybe you need that because life, of course, is a balance. But if we're always putting other people's needs first, we can forget about our own needs. I will say, don't forget to have tact. Sometimes when Mars is sort of sitting in the first, where we forget about the needs of other people. So there is a need to find a little bit of balance in all of this. But, that said, Scorpio season, Scorpio new moon that we just had, for some Leos, it's a time to really focus on the home environment. Maybe you're moving, maybe you're sort of thinking about need to refresh and your home, your living situation. But maybe even to have people come and visit, for example. But we have some big movements on the horizon. We'll talk more about this next week, because don't forget that Pluto will go back to Aquarius. And Aquarius is your relationship sign, and this is really important, Leo or Leo rising. You're in a shift of eras in your life, and for Pluto to go into your relationship sign, which it will be there for 20 years, and I realize that's so big that it's easy to lose the bigger picture, but you're really starting to shift and change and transform how you connect and interact with people. And so even though the Mars-Pluto opposition of Sunday, yesterday, the November 3rd, was in Cancer, Capricorn, the next two oppositions will be in Leo and Aquarius. And so something is brewing, something is changing, and now you have Mars in your sign, and now it's time to take action. But then that retrograde is also bringing you back to something in the past that needs to be looked at and reorganized and integrated. Virgo. So Mercury is your planet, and it's now in Sagittarius. So it's, the energy of you is now focused on your fourth sign: home, family, roots, foundation. And so at least for the next, Mercury will turn retrograde at the end of this month. So home and family will be more of a bigger focus as you go into December. Now, that could be literally about your family, whether that's an abstract look at things, whether it's about a family member. For some Virgos, it's about your living situation and your home environment. You need to move. You need to make changes in the home. You need to shore up your living situation, for example. That said, now you're sort of hanging out for a while in this space. The Mercury will turn retrograde on November 25th at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. So we spend December, the holidays, with Mercury retrograde, not completely the holidays, but That said, then there's Scorpio season. Now, we just had the Scorpio new moon. The Scorpio new moon says that this is perhaps a busy time for Scorpio, a need to move, to travel, to explore, to seek out new perspectives. And Scorpio is also a space that talks about communication for you. And Scorpio does not pull its punches. It's very concise. It's very precise. And maybe there's this period that as you go into the rest of November, you need to talk about something. Maybe it's about family. Maybe it's about the past and memories. But there is something about the voice and communication that will be a major focal point over the next few weeks in November. Yeah, that's... Oh, and then there's Mars in Leo. And Leo is something called your 12th sign. So there's this focus that's happening. And that's the thing about the 12th, is that anything in the 12th on some level is hidden. It's behind, it's in your subconscious, it's in your dreams. It's something that you can access through meditation and spirituality. But there is something with Mars in Leo into the end of January where a lot of the action is happening in a space that maybe you can't quite connect to. What does that mean? Maybe your dreams are more active. Maybe you're more tired. Maybe you need to rest. Maybe you need to recuperate. That plus Mercury spending a lot of time in the 4th says it's a little bit more of a time to sort of go within and start to maybe seek out Mars. And Mars is the planet of seeking out deeper questions about your life, existential questions. So the question that doesn't have an answer for you, Virgo, is how are you going to give space to Mars, especially with the retrograde in December 6th? Do you meditate? Do you go and retreat? Do you carve out time for yourself? Do you begin to listen to your intuition? Because that could be, for some Virgos, where a lot of the focus is happening at the moment. Scorpio, happy birthday, Scorpio. So Mars is your planet, and as you heard me say in the introduction, as of yesterday, November 3rd, Mars is in Leo. And I said this in the introduction, I'll say it again. It's not very often that Mars is in Leo during your season. In fact, the last time Mars was in Leo during your season was 2009. And then we even have to go back further, 1994, 1996, 1977, 1979. So you're like, wow, that's a long time ago. But my point is that, to really appreciate what Leo is bringing to your season, now that Mars is in Leo, it brings this energy of spark, of individuality, a need to express yourself, creativity. It brings the energy of desire. Leo is a sign of Mars is a planet of desire. Leo is the sign of romance and play. It's also passion. It's creativity. And so this is going to be a sort of an umbrella to your experiences as you go into the rest of your season. Now, you just had the Scorpio new moon on November 1st. If your birthday is on November 1st, plus or minus a couple of days, it is a powerful new moon, powerful birthday for you. And don't forget the Mars and Pluto, the Mars-Pluto opposition that we had yesterday. It's really carrying you throughout the next 12 months. And it says that there's something that has to transform and reform. You're a Scorpio, you get it. That life isn't, we're constantly, I say we because I'm also a Scorpio, we're constantly transforming and evolving. But for those that are really born, around the time of the new moon that we just had, that those energies are very heightened to make that alchemical change, to turn lead, air quotes, into gold. So that said, Mars has moved on and it's still dancing in that opposition to Pluto. We're going to feel it even in 2025. But Leo is, again, it's a fire sign. It's not the water of Mars in Cancer. So we have, again, the energies of the new moon that carries us into this week. Next week, we are going to have a pretty interesting Taurus full moon. This Taurus full moon is interesting because it's conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And Scorpio, it's for you to remember that Uranus has been in your relationship sign of Taurus since May of 2018 and March of 2019. And I know a fair bit of Scorpios that have really seen some major life changes and even major changes with relationship over the past 5, 6, and even 7 years. So whatever's beginning to brew again, especially as you go into next week, it's part of a bigger story with that Uranus and Taurus. And we'll talk more about this next week. But it says that with Mars and Leo, Leo is your 10th sign of career. Mars is going to spend a long time, more so than usual in this part of your personal astrology. Mars will turn retrograde on December 6th. Mars will be in Leo until the end of January. It'll come back in April, and I think it leaves by June. So there's something about desire and power, and there's something about your professional life, your public life, and needing to take a step out, to go after what you want, to connect with your ambitions. But with the retrograde, we'll talk more about that as we go into December, to recalibrate something in your life. Sagittarius. So Jupiter is your planet, and it continues to be in Gemini. Gemini is your 7th sign of relationships. So it's like Sag, you have this like personal clock that's calibrated for your sign, and you have a year period where the major hand on your personal clock is pointing towards relationship. And that, of course, is going to mean different things for different Sagittariuses. Maybe the Sag is one of you is already in a major relationship or a partnership, and now it's time to really focus on that relationship or partnership for whatever reason. Some Sages, maybe somebody new is coming into your life. Maybe it's a serious relationship. Maybe it's just a busy time of connection. And I know I keep saying this, but it's like the second half of the year is very different than the first, because now that Jupiter is in Gemini, I realize since the end of May, Jupiter is in this long square with Saturn. So this is not just like, let's play, let's connect with people. Saturn is saying this is about serious stuff. We need to commit. We need to build relationship. We need to build our lives. And that's the thing about astrology, is that astrology teaches us that relationships are one of the key points of our lives. Like, we can't live in isolation. So a lot of the action and right now is happening in relationship. But that said, it's Scorpio season. We've come to the end of your personal zodiac calendar, because Scorpio is your 12th sign. It's the sign that happens before your season. So this is the time, especially with that Scorpio new moon that we just had on November 1st, to rest, to recuperate, to go within. And that's where the other part of the action, and so maybe this is helping you to integrate and to reflect on everything that has changed over the last, 6 months since end of May. But that said, Mars is now in Leo, and Leo is a fire sign just like you. And Leo is a sign of travel, exploration. It's also a sign that helps you to get clear about what you believe and what you stand for. It ignites the energy of passion. And maybe you need that fire energy because there's been so much about Saturn. Even the past couple, since 2023, it's been about Saturn. And maybe you just need to get a little bit of a spark back. And I know Sag typically likes to travel. Not all Sages, but for some Sag, it's really to look towards the horizon, to plan trips, to look outside of yourself, to focus on education, but also to share something, to publish something, to teach something. And this is going to be a focus, and even a major focus, as we go into 2025. Capricorn, so Saturn is your planet still in Pisces. I know. Did I skip over Libra? I'm so sorry. I'll go back to Libra after I do Capricorn. I'm just jumping ahead to Scorpio. So anyway, so I'll do Capricorn. So Saturn is your planet, and Saturn is still in Pisces. It's just this longer story and period of your life. So we got this bigger umbrella, and this umbrella talks about voice, communication, education, needing to take your education seriously, needing to take your voice seriously, needing to perfect how you speak and listen and learn. So there's that. Then a Scorpio season. The Scorpio season is another focus for you. And Scorpio season is something called your 11th sign. So we're starting to get to the end of your personal zodiac calendar. Your calendar resets, your personal year resets, even if you're a Capricorn rising, when the sun goes into Capricorn on December 21st each year. So Scorpio represents the 11th. It is your friends. It is your community. It is your society. It is sort of where your role in the bigger picture of things. And so on one hand, maybe it's a busy time. You want to spend more time with friends. You want to connect with groups or like-minded people. And for other Capricorns, it's about really looking towards the future, looking outside of yourself and trying to gain a bigger picture about where things are going. This is the season for you to hope and to dream and to wish, and again, to have that vision, because you are a Capricorn, and Capricorn is such a sign of building and manifesting. But don't forget to dream. Don't forget to create a vision for yourself. We just had Mars go into Leo, and for you, Capricorn, Leo is your 8th sign. So we're going to have a lot of energy that's focused on the 8th into 2025, because Mars will spend an extra amount of time in your 8th sign. So the 8th is the space that we all need to go into, because that's the space where we face ourselves. And I know you're thinking, I don't want to face myself, but I'm so sorry. This is the time in your personal zodiac where you need to look within, where you need to examine yourself, where you need to get into these sometimes uncomfortable and vulnerable spaces, because that's where the magic goes. That's where the magic happens. So it gets into these themes about identity and maybe even hidden desires, the part of yourself that you don't always reveal to other people, or maybe only your close friends and connection know about. Maybe it's on a broader level, it's getting into themes about trusting my friends. Who can I trust? The groups and the connections that you're involved in, and maybe having to navigate something that is hidden. So, yeah. Oh, let me add, Capricorn, that Pluto is 1.5 more weeks left in your sign. I know, pop the champagne almost. We got to get to the finish line first. But it has been quite a 16-year process of really, really evolutionary, this deep evolutionary work that you need to do. So continue to integrate and to take stock of how much has changed internally, emotionally, and maybe even physically since January of 2008. Libra, doing things a little bit out of order because I just jumped over Libra. So Libra, Venus is your planet, and it's wrapping up its time in Sagittarius this week. So for you, Libra, Sagittarius is something called your 3rd sign. It's voice, it's communication. It's sort of been this time to be curious and to try new things and to weigh your options. And that will begin to change next week when Venus goes into Capricorn. And Capricorn for you is a major sign because it forms part of what's called, well, at least I call your cross. So you've got Libra, or you're either Libra sun, Libra rising. You've got your opposite sign of Aries. You've got the base and foundation of your chart is Capricorn, and your career sign, the top of your chart, is Cancer. These 4 signs build your life. So even though we're not in Capricorn season, Venus is sort of ahead of the game and pointing you next week at least towards home, family, roots, foundation. The other thing to keep in mind is that we are just a month after a solar eclipse in Libra. I didn't forget. I'm sure you didn't either. But this continues to be a very dynamic time in your life. So when Venus goes into Capricorn next week, it really brings us into a new phase of these energies of that solar eclipse in your sign. So if that solar eclipse was about new beginnings or some sort of continued new beginning, it begins to anchor in next week, becomes real, it becomes tangible, it needs to be lived, it needs to, maybe there's a focus on home and family, of course, but I think the next week, was that the 3rd week of November, 2nd week of November, 2nd week of November, 3rd week of November might be really important times to watch, especially as Venus squares the lunar nodes. So this will be a turning point in November for you. That said, it is Scorpio season, and Scorpio is your second sign of money, income, material stability, and security. So this continues to be a time to really focus on the nuts and bolts of your life. We're all human beings. We need a roof over our head. We need food. We need some form of money and currency to do our thing. And so this gets into these questions about your material life. So maybe you are looking at what you own, what you have in the bank, how you earn a living. Maybe you are making purchases and investments, especially around that Taurus full moon next week. And maybe it's not just your material life. Maybe it's even self-worth and value. What is the value of you? For example, Mars, which is a major player in your astrology, it left Cancer yesterday, November 3rd. Cancer is your sign of, wait for it, Cancer is your sign of work, career, it's your public life, and now it pushes the energy towards your 11th sign. And the 11th sign is about your friends, your community, but also the bigger picture of your social causes and looking outward and trying to find your place in the world. And that's going to be a bigger focus even into 2025, because Mars will turn retrograde on December 6th. We're not there yet, but really start to feel that shift, because the themes that are really coming up for you right now, Libra, in addition to everything that I shared, post solar eclipse October 2nd, it's now about the future. It's not just about you. It's not just about new beginnings, but it's about your role in the world, the role that you take, the people that you're connected to, but also your desires for the future and how you are aligning your life towards that. Because when Mars goes back into Cancer at the end of January, so throughout February and even into March, and I think even April, it's a return to your professional life. This is 2025. And to align your sort of professional life and your ambitions to now match something about what you desire to be your role in the world. Did things a little out of order. So Aquarius, so Saturn is your planet. It continues to be in Pisces. I know I say this every week, but there's a big 3-year chapter of your life where the energy of your sign is really focused on money, income, material stability, and security, your sense of value and worth, your relationship with money, how you spend it, how you earn it, resources, property, but also these bigger questions about security and stability. Saturn, your planet, will turn direct next week, November 15th. So that's a big deal, because it's now another sort of stake in the ground in this bigger story about value and worth in your material life. It doesn't mean that you haven't been able to move forward, but the last 4 months have been a need to integrate and to do some sort of inner work. That said, it is Scorpio season, and Scorpio is a major sign for you because it talks about your 10th. The 10th is the highest sign in anybody's astrology. In your case, it's Scorpio. And it talks about your public life, your professional life, your career, your duties and responsibilities in the world, and how people see you. So this new moon says that on a very surface level over the next few weeks, it's about your professional life. Maybe you want to make a change in your professional life. You want to get a new job. You want to get some recognition for your hard work, or maybe it's about more duties and responsibilities in the world and needing to really, take on something on a professional level. Then there's Mars, and Mars is a major player in your astrology. It does rule your career. So, Mars going into Leo, and for you, Aquarius, Leo is a relationship sign, says that this is not just a time to focus on your career, but it's also a time to either to collaborate or to look at how your relationships with other people impact your ambitions, impact your role in the world, impact your responsibilities. And for some, there's a friction point. For some, there's not. But it's really showing that a lot of the field of action, at least for the next 4 weeks, is really in that connection between your relationships and also your public and professional life. And maybe your connections with people right now are, especially with Mars going into Leo, like it's about other people at the moment. Maybe your relationships are not so quiet right now. Sometimes Mars can be provocative. Sometimes Mars can be challenging. And for those Aquariuses where there is some sort of issue in your relationship that's been on the back burner and you've just been sort of hitting the snooze button, Mars brings it to the forefront, and Mars is a bit noisy. And keep in mind that Mars is going to be in Leo into the end of January of 2025. And then Mars is retrograde. Mars will return to the space in April. So there is some bigger story about relationships that really needs your attention that you will be working out into the new year. Goodness. Pisces, finally Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet. It's still in your fourth sign of home and family and roots and foundation, and a little bit of a check-in. Pisces, how are you doing? On one hand, this is a time in your personal astrological clock where a major hand is pointing towards home and family. This happens like once every, every 12 years. And so this is saying this is the time to either put down roots for you to focus on your home environment. Of course, home means different things to different people. But we're humans. We're hardwired for some sort of sense of home and connection, to feel our sense of stability and grounding, to perhaps have a family, to start a family, or maybe to I realize home can be a luxury for some people, but to create a home that feels like our home. This continues to be a major time in your astrology. Saturn is still in Pisces. Reflect back on life over the last year and a half, because Saturn has really been building this big new chapter in your life where more has been asked of you, more responsibility, a need to step up into a role, and maybe your life has seen some major personal milestones over the last year and a half. That said, it's Scorpio season, and Scorpio is your ninth sign. And the ninth sign's like, it's different for everybody, but the ninth is a space where we really try to make our world bigger. How do we make our world bigger? We make our world bigger by opening up our eyes. For some, it's traveling. We get on a plane, we go to another country, we experience different cultures, we experience different points of view. For some, we make our world bigger by taking classes, going to university or college or to some sort of philosophy that expands how we think about the world, and for some, to make your world bigger is to make our world bigger for other people. We want to share something, we want to illuminate something because we have learned it. And that's the thing about being ruled by Jupiter, because you are ruled by Jupiter, Pisces, is that your sign is to inspire and motivate people. Pisces is the water sign, so it feels deeper, it feels spiritual, it feels existential. And so some of these things may be coming out now that it's Scorpio season, that you really feel this passion, desire to share, to teach, to discover, to illuminate, because that's part of how you normally express who you are, Pisces, because you've got such a big heart. But that said, Mars is really shows wherever the action is at the moment, has just gone into Leo. And for you, Pisces, Leo is your sign. I gotta do the math. Is your sign, your sixth sign. Now, of course, we're all different people, but pay attention to your physical health and wellness, because Mars is going to be in this space for quite a while. It will turn retrograde on December 6th, and it will be in Leo until the end of January. It returns in April, but there's something where either you feel motivated to make changes in your physical life, you want to change your habits, you want to change your day-to-day structures, you want to change your health and wellness. Mars can inspire you to go to the gym, Mars can inspire you to take action, or maybe there's something that sort of demands your attention, because sometimes Mars can really demand our attention. Of course, this is going to be different for every Pisces, but this is one of the areas of focus, health and wellness, and hopefully taking positive and healthy steps into the new year. So there you go. I jumped over Libra, but I didn't thank you, Brenda, for reminding me. But I don't know what it is. Sometimes I forget Libra, sometimes I forget Virgo. It must be that middle of the sign. So anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you. I know some of you are familiar faces, some of you are clients, and for those that don't know, I do work one-on-one with clients. I'd love to illuminate the astrology. I love to bring you into the space that has been created for you in this life, and for you to discover maybe these bigger themes and maybe even the bigger purpose and the bigger potential of your life. So you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com, book a consultation with me. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. I look forward to connecting with you all next week. Got some big astrology on the horizon with Saturn turning direct on November 15th. The Taurus full moon on November 15th, and then even Pluto returning to Aquarius on November 19th. So lots to discuss. Enjoy Mars and Leo, and I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.